It is a magical moment here at the old Edge Radio Studios. Guess why? Faye Suzanne is here in the building, in the flesh, after working on these incredible shifts, bouncing from neonatal to neonatal or whatever. It is post. I don't know.
Neonatal to postnatal.
So I don't know what's going on. See, there we go. This is why we've got you in, because
right.
You can clarify these things. You can educate me in all things Soulbirth.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Just what you wanted.
I hope so. I hope
fine
so.
Tuesday morning.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, people could be listening to the replay right now, so you can't be presumptuous.
Yeah, it might be night
that's
time
right.
for all we know.
We don't know.
Welcome whoever's watching out there.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's jump into it because we've kind of touched on the subject of what today's about. What is today about?
Well, today I thought we'd have a discussion around, how those parents out there can bond with their babies who might be in the neonatal intensive care unit, or NICU.
NICU?
As we call it, yes.
Okay. This is a biggie because it happens to a lot of people.
It does.
It's not rare.
We think. Yeah. So, when birth doesn't always go as we planned, and so, you might find yourself with suddenly, expecting to go to term and have this beautiful, healthy baby, and, leave hospital with your baby straight after birth, whereas it doesn't always happen that way.
It doesn't, and that's a big point. And a lot of people have gone through the experience where they've had a baby premature, so you're not that far into the pregnancy. Well, kind of you think, look, I've got ages to go, I've got things to plan, all of that, and all of a sudden the baby has other ideas.
Exactly. There's all kinds of things that can unfold along the pregnancy journey, and suddenly you find yourself having your baby at 24 weeks or something.
24 weeks.
The 40 weeks gestation is term, but we know 38 to 42, anywhere in between that. You would expect to hopefully get there, but you don't always arrive at that stage.
So 24 weeks. Oh, my word.
Just over halfway. That 5 months pregnancy.
Right, just so tiny.
It
Absolutely.
is very tiny.
All right, let's talk about it. So do you want to talk about the physical side of things? Do you want to talk about the emotional side of things? Which bit
we'll cover it all today, Aaron.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah.
Well, although you have given me this lovely page of notes, I haven't actually had the opportunity to read them. So I'm going to have a bit of a read as we go. Well, this is great. This is education, right?
Keeping us on track today.
I don't know about that. I'm not sure we can keep on track.
I'm sure we'll get I'm sure
there's some way I can work a car story into birth again. Okay, this is how we do it. But
well, I tell you what, if the baby arrives prematurely, you'll be rushing. You'll probably be going in the ambulance.
Oh, this is a great point.
Yes.
All right, well, let's talk about let's start with the physical side of things, right? You're at home, you're doing your thing, and all of a sudden things start happening and you think, hang on, I'm at 24, 25 weeks. This is so early in the pregnancy, so to speak. There'd be a lot of emotional things, but let's talk about the physical first and foremost.
Yeah, well, quite often things can happen during the pregnancy, and you might get rushed into hospital because you're having tightenings, or you might have a bleed, or your waters break, early on like that, and you go in, and it doesn't always mean that you're going to have the baby then, because that's what, when you go into the hospital, they try everything they can to, settle the pregnancy and
you've confused me there though. You said the waters are, I know, so early, right? But okay, you said the waters are broken. I didn't think there was any going back once the waters are broken.
No, you can go to rest, because well, that's the aim, because you don't want the baby to come out before it's ready. So, if you can keep the baby in there, so even if the waters break, bed rest, obviously, and they'll probably end up doing antibiotics so that the baby doesn't get an infection or
makes sense.
Inflammation inside, because that can be quite dangerous.
Okay.
But there's all kinds of things that they look at, and they try to stabilise and keep the mum from going into labour, because we don't want the baby born early if we can help it, because the baby's better off in the uterus.
Right. So the baby's cool to stay in the uterus with the water's already broken.
Oh, only as long as mum's being monitored really well, because we want to make sure she doesn't get a temperature, because we don't want her getting an infection, because then the baby does need to be delivered or birth. At that stage, it would be get the baby out quickly and get in an incubator. So it's like the incubator is like a an outside womb.
Well, I suppose it's exactly what it is.
They've got to create the warmth and the environment that is as close to womb-like as possible to keep the baby thriving.
Okay, I'm amateur on this one. Okay, what kind of temperature are we talking about?
Or body temperature.
Okay.
So think of the baby in the womb. It's floating around in amniotic fluid in the mum's uterus. And so, if it is out of there, once it leaves that environment, it needs to be kept in a similar like environment, although it's not going to be an amniotic fluid, clearly. But we need, in an incubator, we keep it at the right temperature. So we monitor the temperature of the incubator.
Sure.
And you're monitoring the baby's temperature as well. So as long as the temperature in the incubator isn't too high and causing the baby to be hot, because otherwise then you need to reduce the temperature of the incubator. So it's always as a role as a midwife or nurse looking after babies in NICU,
Yep.
is constantly making sure the environment is the right temperature for the baby.
Sorry, you and your little technical terms. NICU.
NICU.
What's NICU? I mean, NICU.
That's what I said at the beginning. The
Yeah, I
neonatal
know.
intensive care unit is NICU.
NICU. Well, NICU to me, that's the name of a Formula One driver. So it's all
is
yeah, there we go.
There you go.
I snuck it
See,
in.
car, he snuck it in.
I did.
You did it. NICU is short for neonatal intensive care unit.
Gotcha.
That's quite a mouthful to say.
It really is. Okay, we'll stick with NICU then.
Yeah.
You spent a bit of time there.
I have, over you realise 40 years I've been in that area.
No way.
And I did a lot of work in the NICU when in the early days.
Yep.
Even before I started my midwifery, I was lucky to, work in a NICU over in Sydney.
What a privilege, though.
It is.
I mean, I can imagine it's, a pretty intense place in some respects.
It is, but it's amazing and it's really rewarding. Like, it's my favourite area to work, actually, because it's just really beautiful working with little babies and the parents and helping them through that traumatic journey that they've been on and they're still in.
Well, let's talk about the journey, as I say, on the physical sense. A woman's body. What's a woman's body going through at that point?
Because you can quite often think even just psychologically mainly. A lot of trauma happens with parents
I can imagine.
when this happens, just because they weren't expecting to have anything happen.
Yep.
This is if we're talking about preterm.
Sure.
And so when the baby is suddenly here, months before you expected it,
Mm-hmm.
you've got all the oh my gosh, what happened? So you're kind of in shock, as well as dealing with the whole fact that now you have a preterm baby that you weren't expecting, and it's like, is my baby okay?
Sure, it's going to be a biggie, isn't it?
Is it going to be? Is my baby going to survive?
Mm-hmm.
And they're so tiny, because some of them
and so much fear, so much fear.
Yeah, definitely.
And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you short on the tiny bit. I mean, I like to focus on the positives here. I like the fact that people get together and they start making little baby clothes and little dolls' clothes and that, because obviously. I mean, when our kids are born, they're normally 4 zeros from memory.
Oh, when they're first born, they're about 3 zeros
or
2 zeros. It depends. The sizes have changed a lot over the years, because when my kids were little, you couldn't get any smaller than a 000.
Right.
But now there's 4 zeros and 5 zeros for newborns. Yeah. So the babies in the NICU, what size are they?
Oh man, that's right. How many zeros you got involved in?
But we have lots of wonderful volunteers that make preemie baby clothes and donate them to the nurseries.
It's a beautiful thing, and I mean that's good for people there's people who are retired who do that sort of thing. And again, we're kind of covering the psychology here too, aren't we? Because it's good for people to feel like they're contributing and they're helping and being part of all of this.
Absolutely. And if anybody out there actually would like to do something like that, get in touch with one of the big hospitals that has a NICU, neonatal intensive care unit, because they're always looking for people to knit woolen, hats and booties and make the little suits, especially when babies have got all kinds of lines in them.
Yeah.
Because
lines in them?
Preterm babies will have IV lines, they'll have an umbilical line, they'll have catheters, they'll have, not catheters, sorry, but they'll have, urine bags, they'll have all kinds of things attached to them, SATs, monitors, everything. So they've got cords and things hanging off them, which is part of the psychological trauma that a parent has to deal with as well, because they've got this little baby, might only be like 700 grams or smaller sometimes, and they've got all these lines coming out of them. So it's like, how can you even touch your baby? Because there's so many bits and pieces attached to them. And then how do you put clothing on a baby that's got that much stuff on?
So true. And I'm going to flip the psychological thing on this. Once upon a time, my dad had electrocuted himself, right? So he was in hospital with all the monitors and all the kind of carry on. And I remember going in there as a child. I was about 10, 11. I walked in there and seeing my dad, sort of the sign of your strength when you're about that age. Yeah. And he had all of these cables and everything all over him. Anyway, he covered himself up and he did everything to make it look like, there's nothing going on. He didn't realize, of course, that we knew about all the monitors behind him. He was completely out of it. But he was trying to show a brave face and actually pretend that there was nothing going on. Now, I remember how that affected me as a child. Now, on the flip side, when you're a parent and you're protective and you see your little tiny, tiny baby there with all the cords.
I know, so it's quite the same. Just that the patient is the miniature version.
Yeah, you've done the flip on it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, because then the parents are the ones worried about their tiny little baby in the
incubator.
On.
Yeah, I mean, I've never experienced that, and I'm very, very lucky in that regard, but people I love very much have gone through that. I can't imagine how vulnerable you feel when that's going on. I mean, what are the main reasons why that your baby would end up in this?
So there's quite a number of reasons. So it's not just preterm babies, because obviously they would be in there if they're less than about 32 weeks, usually under 38 weeks. That if they may need the nursery. especially under 36 weeks. It depends entirely on their size and how they're coping with extrauterine life, once they're out. Because big one is, size, obviously. So are they big enough to maintain their temperature? Blood sugar levels, because when they're preterm also, or small, and even term babies, especially if their mum's been diabetic and then they have, a lot of low sugars. So if their sugars are repeatedly low, they'll need to be in the nursery for extra monitoring.
Okay.
It may be that, they've got a heart condition, so there's actual physical abnormalities as well, or issues that the baby needs to be monitored.
On that front, funny enough, I don't know if it's just me, but in life, so two of the significant women in my life were born with holes in their heart. Right?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
That's quite a common thing.
That's what I was going to ask. Is it common, or am I
because it's
have I got a hit rate?
No, quite. Well, there's two different sides to that, because it can be like a normal thing, which is when the baby's in utero, they've got different circulation, and sometimes it doesn't close up properly.
Okay.
Especially if they're preterm, but they quite often have a medication that just helps it, to the little opening to close up quickly. But it may be just a little murmur that they're hearing through the stethoscope, and that just corrects itself. But then sometimes it can be bigger, more significant issue that needs tending to later.
Yeah, because I was wondering if that's common. And funny enough, both of these women were a little bit prim. So I'm just wondering if that's got some sort of link to it.
It's normally prim babies.
Oh, okay.
That issue.
There you go.
Yeah, normally by term, there's no issue there.
So it sorts itself out.
Yeah, but when the paediatrician does the baby checks before they leave to go home, if they pick up a murmur, then they'll just recommend that they have, a follow-up appointment to check on that, because, in case it doesn't, rectify itself.
Develop it into something else. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So other reasons that baby might be in the nursery. So there's NICU, which is intensive care, but then there's also step-down nurseries. So as they grow, or some of them, we call them the fattening up stage, where they're
not a Christmas
totally
turkey.
okay.
Come on.
They just need to grow a bit bigger and maintain their temperature before they can go home. So they might be in there long term, like weeks, and even sometimes they're in there for months, because they have to. Because if they're born like at 24 weeks, they start in the NICU, and then they gradually, as they get bigger and bigger and maintaining their temperature, they graduate into the next nursery, and then they follow along until they're big enough and
until they're ready for Christmas. Gotcha. Okay. Well, but it makes sense. I mean, you can't send a baby home when they're vulnerable, when they're that small.
No, that's right. Exactly.
And they're obviously susceptible to all sorts of things. So
exactly. If they need any kind of extra care, then they're in there for special care, because special care nursery.
That's what it's all about.
So, exactly. So if a baby's showing signs of breathing difficulties as well.
Okay.
So if they're having chest recession when they're breathing, that's usually a sign that there's an issue there. So they need to be monitored. Or if they're having apnea attack, if they stop breathing.
Oh, right.
A lot of people come home now. You can get your own little apnea mats to take at home and put in.
Hang on, what's an apnea mat?
So it's a little mat that goes under the sheets of the baby, so that when they stop breathing, it sets the alarm off. So you can go in and actually stimulate your baby to breathe.
Okay.
Which normally it's just like lift their chin or just reposition them, which a lot of parents panic if this happens, because they, my baby stopped breathing, or they're turning blue, but they don't touch the baby. Whereas, if the baby does that, you just kind of usually just stimulate under their chin, or just reposition them, or pick them up and lean them forward. Just make sure they're not.
Hard not to panic though. Like it'd be hard not to get the stress.
But the first thing is just pick your baby up and let's sit it forward so that it opens up. It's more getting the jaw open. So.
Okay. And these are things you can do quite easily.
Yeah. I mean, in the nursery, you just kind of give them a little rub. Or
as simple as that.
Yeah, usually, and then it reverts.
One of those most terrifying moments of my entire life, full stop, it was when my youngest was actually choking, and he couldn't breathe, and I'm watching him change colour and all of that. And total kudos to my wife on this one. Picked him up, held him upside down by the feet, right?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But the fact that she went straight into that, like there was no panic. I don't believe I was outwardly panicking, but I was thinking, what do I do? Like my thought was, the old Heimlich, or some sort of.
How old was he?
He was, I don't know. Let me think. About roughly. Maybe 3.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my youngest used to do this all the time.
Oh, really?
She was always choking on stuff. So, she's a nurse now. So
okay, she's got the talent.
Watching, but she was always good at choking. So I was always having to.
Really? It scared the hell out of me. Yeah, she held him up, boom, like by the feet, and gave him a shake and a pound, a pounding, an absolute.
Oh my God, that's radical.
Right. Well. It worked. It
Oh
worked.
my gosh.
So
you can be more gentle. You can actually just sit them right forward, because quite often the reason why, especially babies, when talking about little babies, they normally, if anything, a bit of regurg. They might have had some milk and they've inhaled it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so you just sort of lean them forward, over your hand and rub their back, and that's usually enough, because then if they have a little spit up, and then they're fine.
A little bit of spit. No, this is why I asked questions, because like in that situation, I didn't know how to save my son's life, and it was quite concerning. And whether the techniques that my wife used were the right ones or the wrong ones, they're effectively the right ones, because it got him to breathe again. But if there was a more gentle way of doing it.
So I really recommend all parents to do first aid courses, so that you know how to respond to different emergencies or times like that when you're not sure. And I know when babies are in the NICU, parents usually have a first aid course that they can attend that's organised through the NICU.
Okay.
Yeah, because a lot of the babies that are there may have issues later on. It doesn't mean they will, but because they're already vulnerable and they may be more susceptible to, choking, or not necessarily choking, but apnea attacks or other different things. But, the care provider will talk to you about what some of the things are to look out for. It's always really good to do a first aid course, so that when something happens like that, you don't panic. You just know how to respond to it.
Definitely don't want to be doing any panicking.
No, that's right.
Comments just come in as well. I'm just putting that one up on the screen if I may. And this is from Stephen Anthony. And as soon as the screen lets me see it, that'll be great. Come on screen, play the game. Great to see a comment there from Stephen. It said Soulbirth, and it's just disappeared again. Sorry, screen. Obviously, computer's having a bit of a moment.
Yeah, and if anybody out there watching has actually, had the experience of having a baby in the nursery, please message us and tell us what your experience was and what were the biggest hurdles that you had to overcome.
Agree. Well, Stephen's actually said Soulbirth happens before human birth, and that's quite a point.
Happens before. It does. This is the soul. This is what we're all about. The soul
exactly
coming
right.
in, exactly. And so the soul is around the baby well before the birth.
Thanks for that comment, mate. Very good point. Very good
one of the things I do is communicate with the soul of the baby even before conception, because they are around. They're actually
you're on it. I tell you what,
communicate with their mothers and fathers before they actually even are conceived.
It's such an interesting thing, though, on that front. I mean, and also, let's work on that line. So a soul might want to come in at 24 weeks, not the 38, not the 40.
Well, this is true.
So what's that all about?
Soul journey, soul choices. So, everything happens for a reason, I believe. And so, and everyone is individual. So we never know what that soul has chosen for their journey. And sometimes, part of their lessons or challenges that they come in, it might be a challenge for themselves. So they may come in early because they need to have some experience of whatever their condition is, or it may also be to give the parents a learning or an opportunity to grow into what that entails, because most parents that have a baby that's in the NICU will have a very personalised set of challenges to overcome.
I agree. I mean, look, I'm dancing a little bit here, because somebody I do actually care a lot about actually went through this, and I unfortunately wasn't able to be part of the experience, and it's really, really sad, because I'll lay it out there. You need your family support. You need your support systems. You need the people who love you around.
You do, absolutely.
And sometimes family dynamics and divorces and all kind of ugly stuff gets in the way and actually stops people from being supported. So what I was basically sort of saying is, put your ego away. Very much put your ego away. Very much get to the point where, you're thinking about the child and obviously the parents as well.
Exactly. Right? And that's where I feel like the gift in this experience for parents is to actually create a really beautiful support network around themselves, so that, as they are going through the experience, that they've got people that love and care for them and that can support them with meals or, talking to debrief, because one of the big things is debriefing their experience,
Okay. I don't want to take you onto a path that you're not sort of ready to go down to, but the debrief, can you explain that to me? What
that's
do you
huge.
mean?
I mean, this is something that should happen after every birth anyway,
we've talked about
regardless
this
of how
before,
it goes. We have, because it's really important, even if you've had a positive birth, to actually be able to talk to someone about how the birth unfolded, because it's really good to just go through it in your mind and get clarity around it, and from other people's perspective as well, so somebody else that was there. But when something happens that leads to a traumatic outcome, and especially with your baby in the nursery, it's really, really important to have somebody to talk to, whether it's a medical professional or a friend or a doula, or somebody who does what I do, because I also do that with people, is to debrief people through their birth experience and talk through what actually happened, what was the plan, and Where did it deviate? Now, what's the situation? What are the challenges that you're going through, and what might have been the cause or the reason for those, and how they're coping with it as well.
I would love to see people's opinions on this. So I noticed, as I say, unfortunately, we can't see every feed. We get the little notice saying that there's actually people commenting on feeds I can't see, but I can see the feed coming in from our YouTube page. So I really appreciate that. As I say, Stephen's come through that particular avenue. But if you've got a personal experience here, if you've got something that, if you want to talk about or ask questions about your experience with having a baby preterm, look, whack a question in there or a comment. I would really like to hear it, because something I have noticed on the notes that you've given me most efficiently here. But I think this is a great point, because it just makes it very clear to me. As a parent, you'd be feeling a lot of, all sorts of feelings, right? But what about grief? What about the hopelessness? And feeling helpless.
Totally,
feeling helpless would be a big thing.
Totally, I mean, because you lose control of the whole experience once
of course.
things go AWOL, so not how you planned. So when your baby gets taken away from you and has to be in the nursery, so you lose that opportunity for that bonding. That golden hour we talked about a couple of weeks ago. So that golden hour is gone, because if the baby's sick or preterm, they need to get to the nursery as soon as possible, especially if they're on a ventilator. Like if they need help to breathe, then they can't be having all this lovely skin to skin initially, because they've got to be whisked off to the nursery and stabilized. So the mother misses out on that, and it may be a couple of days before she even gets down to the nursery to see her baby, and then she can only see the baby through the glass, through the incubator, or it may be on an open cot, because really preterm babies that are really sick are usually nursed on an open cot with the overhead heaters, and they might have a little tunnel over them that's to keep them warm as well, and to keep the oxygen in there, because they'll be on oxygen,
of course,
or they might be ventilated, so they have tubes in their nose, and they'll be ventilated or be on CPAP, which is a machine to keep the lungs open.
Well, people have got sleep apnea use those.
Yes,
this is obviously
exactly.
a much smaller one. Another comment in from Stephen. Again, appreciate these questions, mate, or comments. He's put, I think we're talking about different things as far as the birth goes. Mate, I'd love to, let's clarify. If you could type down and send us a message about actually specifically what you've got that question or comment about, that'd be great. We'd be very happy to talk about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Longer term stuff, the old PTSD, things like that. Are these going to be, I mean, is this a prevalent problem?
Oh, definitely, especially when birth goes the way you didn't plan it to, and when you've got the baby in the nursery, that's a very real issue. Postnatal depression and PTSD, because it's the shock value, the grief that you're undergoing, because when the parents do go through grief that their baby is now, especially if they're sick or and their lives are hanging on the line, because some babies don't make it. Some babies unfortunately do not survive.
It's horrendous to think. I mean, we're very lucky. We live in a world where the medicine is, there's just so many things that can be done.
Because going back to when I finished my midwifery training, I went up to the Highlands of Papua New Guinea to work, and this was a really huge lesson for me around the value of modern technology, because if babies are born prematurely there, they just die. Because there's no facilities to keep them alive. They don't have ventilators. They don't have NICUs. They don't have anything more than just they do have the phototherapy lights if a baby needs phototherapy, because they're jaundiced, which is another reason babies will be in the nursery. But they only had wire cots that had been donated, and it was just open air. There was no sterility, no warmth, nothing. So if a baby couldn't maintain its own temperature and survive on its own, then it died, unfortunately. So it was survival of the fittest. It made me realise that instances like that, we're very lucky that we do have the technology and modern conveniences, to keep babies alive.
It's such a massive thing. It really, really is. And I mean, wow, what a stark difference between the two experiences, one in a modern hospital, one without. You're very lucky to have seen that. I think that gives you a perspective, and we all need perspective in life.
And even from the time I finished my training, way back 40, 35, 37 years ago, it's a long time ago now, things have changed a lot in the NICU, because babies, for instance, they used to give babies 100% oxygen. And then they found that they were detaching their retinas.
No way.
Too high oxygen is not good for the baby, because oxygen is a drug as well. Because in the air that we breathe, there's only 21% oxygen.
Okay, weird question. I don't know if you've got the answer to this, but I have noticed this myself, that prem children go on normally to have sight problems.
Sight problems.
Mhm.
Well,
Like like almost every prem baby that I've ever known who's grown to be an adult have all through life had the needed
so
glasses.
see, because now that might be related to that, because if they're adults now, they probably came through that time when
Yeah.
they were giving high concentrations of oxygen. But
Okay.
then research actually proved that that was actually dangerous for their eyesight, their vision, and it was
Right.
detaching retinas in babies.
Okay.
So they gradually started bringing down the oxygen by using the SATS monitor, which is the oxygen saturation in the
Yep.
blood. So now that's one of the things that they do to monitor babies preterm, because we don't want to give them more oxygen than they need.
See, even a baby needs an O2 sensor. See, another car thing. There we go. I'm just teasing you. That's amazing, because I know that babies who are premature have spent a lot of time in the ICU, NICU units. Like they tend to have different characteristics. You know, that's been something that's been studied. Obviously, they generally grow to be smaller. They normally grow to.
No, that's been
That's
not
been.
the
Oh,
case. No, it's not
okay.
the case
Stand
because,
corrected.
Yeah. No, that was always the belief.
Right.
But they've followed so many of them. Like I love, in NICUs, they always have a photo wall where they actually have parents that come back, years and years later,
Yep.
and to give an update on how their child's developed, because they end up like with a really close bond with the staff in the nurseries, because they've been there for such a long term. So I love it when you hear from parents whose babies were born at 24, 25, 26 weeks.
Yeah.
And then the parents come back like 20 years later and say, my child is now an adult and they've gone to uni. So,
how good's
there's
that?
been no lack, so this is what I want to actually impart too, is that, there is, even though a baby might be very, very sick or very, very preterm in the nursery, don't give up hope on things that, that they can still actually lead a normal life and be, intelligent. They,
Of course.
their brain development can still be perfectly good when they're managed well. So this is why the beauty of modern technology now is the way they manage preterm babies has come so far in 40 years that now babies have a really good outcome further down the track.
That's fantastic. And that's, this is the advancements in technology and in medicine that we want, right?
Yeah, because what you were saying was correct for 40 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, but now it's not.
I'm getting old. What can I say?
Me too.
Hey, you've got a term down here, which, because I was actually going to ask this question, but I've never ever seen this term before. Kangaroo care.
Oh,
okay.
Well, you've never heard of this
Never,
one, so.
ever. I mean, I did own a kangaroo. I did care for it, but there you go.
Well, how does a kangaroo carry its joey?
Okay, in the old pouch.
That's right.
Right.
So this
Skin to
was
skin, right?
So this was implemented. See, this wasn't a thing back 40 years ago either. This kind of got brought in. They found that there were way better outcomes for preterm babies when they could actually have skin to skin with, because it comes back to the skin to skin bonding. So when the babies are put skin to skin with the mother and or the father, so if the mum can't come to the nursery because she's in ICU or something's going on with her and she can't get to the nursery, the dad is good too. So just as beneficial, because there's that strong connection.
Of course.
And so putting the baby skin to skin, keeping them really well wrapped, but skin to skin there, but keeping covers over them, but you're putting them in a kind of pouch on the chest. And
is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're kind of putting them in a pouch against the skin, so it's just like a joey in the kangaroo's pouch.
See, I saw kangaroo. I thought I meant you. I'm just hopping out of the room from a boom boom.
No.
That's great, because I often see, and particularly in other cultures, you see that where they wrap the baby.
Well, see, in New Guinea, they carry them all the time around,
Right.
Yeah, or they either that or in a bilum bag on the back of their head.
Yep.
But they do have them on the skin all the time, carrying them around, just always latched to the breast.
Gotcha.
So, we can learn a lot from primitive cultures. They're not that primitive at all. We need to learn a lot from them.
I don't know. I'm in my 50s. I'm still attached to the breast. We've got.
We don't want to go there. So
got to have a laugh about things. That is so cool. And the bonding thing, I joke, but the reality is bonding is unbelievably important.
It is.
And I've spoken to people who've had their kids in the NICU unit, which I didn't even know that was what it was called, but now I do. And they were all upset about the fact that they didn't get the time to actually bond with the child as much as they wanted, which is very sad.
So they try now in the NICUs. They're really aware of this now.
Yep.
So they try, as soon as the baby is actually stable enough to be able to do that, they actually try to get the baby onto the chest, skin to skin for as long as they can. Even if it's only a few minutes, it's beneficial.
Yep.
Because what they found that it does, it actually helps to regulate the baby's heart rate.
Okay.
It calms them right down. and it gets them into a really good rhythm. They grow better, they thrive more, and also the mum gets the oxytocin flowing because she needs that for her milk supply as well.
Great point.
Yeah, so when she's got the baby against her skin, all the hormones come rushing through and she can feel the milk coming in, and then she's more likely to actually be able to have successful breastfeeding. Or even if the baby can't breastfeed yet because it's too small and can't latch, you know, then they have to have express milk. But even if mum can let down and just be able to express even 0.2 of a mil, 0.2 of a mil is enough to, yeah, that's, well, usually babies when they're first born, the mums will only be able to get out 0.2 or 0.4 of a mil.
Really?
Until the colostrum starts to flow a bit.
Oh, okay.
So, but if you can syringe it and get even just a couple of drops to put on the baby's mouth, the lips there, just so they get a taste of it, and they're getting some of it, and they lick it. And if any little drop of express milk is perfect, you know, it's great. It's so good for the baby.
I remember the breast milk on the lips thing, and I thought, what's that all about? But there you go.
Yeah, because they lick and lap at it. Because even if they can't have a feed, like I was saying, because most of the babies in NICU, while they're really little, they'll be on tube feeds or having all IV fluids, but they won't be having milk feeds until they're old enough for their gut to cope with it.
That makes
a lot of sense. Because their guts are still immature as well when they're preterm.
Oh, wow. So, there's so many things to think about.
Oh, there are. There's a big problem in preterm babies also is necrotizing enterocolitis. So very big word, but it's NEC. It's called NEC. But that's actually another gut issue that can be caused by introducing feeds too early. And it's a whole lot of stuff to do with the normal flora, the bacteria in the stomach.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a lot around that. And that, again, has improved a lot. And now we're more aware of these feeding issues. So we don't introduce feeds into the stomach until the baby's actually ready.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking down here because you've mentioned the expressing and the breastfeeding here, and I think that's there's just things you don't. Well, as a man, I don't think about. Right. I mean, obviously, I'm a big believer in breastfeeding is the natural way to go, and if a woman can breastfeed, obviously not all women can, but if you can, it's such a positive thing. Like I would encourage it. Like you can't believe it's. I mean, apart from the health benefits, which are obviously massive, there's the bonding thing, which is such a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And it's for both ways. It's so that the baby can thrive as well. So they have this connection going because they've been in the womb for this time and the mum and bub are very connected. But, and also for dads to be around as well. It's really, really important. But, you know, just to get that connection going, so, which is why kangaroo care is amazing because the dads can be involved in that as well and get the skin to skin.
And to tell you right now, walking, as far as not the wrapping bit, but me back in the day when I'd walk around and I'd hold my baby, oh my God, it just feels so good.
It does.
Like it just, it means, you've got the meaning of life right there. It's an amazing experience. And I mean, I spent some time as a single dad with a small baby under the age of a year. So, you know, like it's a very full on time, but the bond and the love is just such an incredible experience.
You know? So can you imagine a little tiny preterm baby that's covered in tubes and bits and pieces? So it's a really stressful time for parents because, you know, they're thinking they're going to break their baby if they put them on them because they're so tiny, and then they've got, you know, IVs in their arms and like different monitors on and all kinds of things, and so they're trying to put them on and they're like timid, thinking they're going to break the baby, and am I going to do something? Am I going to knock something out? Don't want to hurt the baby because
it would be very scary.
It is really scary, but there's always staff in the nursery that like you wouldn't be getting the baby out yourself to do that. The staff are there and they very carefully put the baby against you and they're there watching the whole time, and the baby's still monitored. So they've still got all the machines that go bing.
Well, okay, here's another way that I'm going to throw out there that you could probably bond with your baby if you're worried about the touching and all that. You know, what about just having a conversation with your baby? How about talking?
Absolutely.
How about a bit of a sing, right? Why not?
Babies love you being sung to.
They do. You know, it would help if you've got a good voice, but you know, if you haven't,
well, they're used to your voice. So if you've been singing to them while you were carrying them, then you keep singing because they do love it. They really settle when they hear your voice.
No death metal though. Is that what I'm saying?
Probably not.
No, probably not. Okay. Bit of rap. I don't know.
But it's interesting. Quite often in nurseries they have a radio going as well because babies respond to that. They like to have the noise around because they're used to it in utero. Of
course they are.
Because they're used to hearing all the sounds of all the workings in your intestines as well as all the outside
even think about that.
Muffled, but they're more settled when there's a bit of noise going on. So FYI, when you take your baby home too, or when you birth at home, babies are more settled when there's a bit of background noise because they're used to it.
I'm a big fan of that. When people make their houses like, I don't know, like a church at midnight, I don't get it. I really shh. Don't get me wrong. No one wants to wake up the baby once they're asleep. But you need to go on with normal life. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up, in my eyes.
Yeah.
You're setting yourself up to always be on walking on eggshells, right?
Yeah, true.
So,
and there's certain sounds that babies respond to. So, the womb sounds, or they
Yep.
have the white noise.
Yeah.
A lot of mums, my daughters and daughter-in-law included, like to
Yep.
have the white noise monitor going because it sounds a bit like the sounds in the womb.
Really?
Yeah.
Never thought about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I always had something with a little bit of a beat going, right? And I always felt that was a good thing.
Yeah. Like puppies too, when you've taken the puppy away from the mum and they don't settle, so you put a ticking clock in their in their bed because they feel more settled when they can.
Never heard that one
hot
before.
water bottle
Is
and
that
a
right?
clock, because it actually helps little puppies settle after being separated from their mum.
Okay, little tip: don't use the digital one. Really not going to do much.
Have to hear the tick tick.
That's right. Okay, now this is something interesting because I mentioned this before about photographs, right? Please don't use flash photographs or photography on
their
children.
Poor little sensitive eyes.
Oh, particularly then, I can imagine it's a big drama.
Exactly.
But what about journaling? What about like keeping sort of I don't know, records, if you like, for your own?
Yeah, so that's really great, and especially this is something really, really important for mums that are still in the hospital but their baby's in the NICU, or even more important once you've gone home, is to have a photo of the baby. And the NICU staff normally always take a Polaroid photo of your baby to give to you.
Polaroid.
So you can take it back with you to the ward, because it's really important when you're trying to express to have some visual of your baby, because it helps you to connect with the baby and to actually let down your milk so that you can actually pump. Because if you've got no connection with the baby, it's really hard to pump and get any milk.
That's just amazing. Okay, here's the thing. Again, let's talk about tech, right? We live in a world. Why don't you grab your phone and do a little video, right?
You
okay.
Can do,
and I mean, that surely watching a video of your child and actually be able to hear them and experience them on that 3D level, if you like.
Especially when they're making their little sounds. If they're crying. Crying is a really good one for letting the milk down, because
is that right?
Obviously you don't want to deliberately make your baby cry, but if you've got a video and you've got your baby just making their normal sounds, or crying a little bit, if you have that and you watch that while you're trying to express, then it will actually help your oxytocin and all that, all the hormones that we need to let the milk down so that we can express. So you get a much better supply.
Well, let's face it, when a baby is crying, I mean, there could be 20 babies there, but a woman will always know the sound of her child.
Your own baby,
yes.
but it's the picture of your baby too, or video of your baby, like you say, because that's one thing we always recommend to women in the hospital that have a baby in the nursery, because it does help them a lot. And to stay in contact with their baby, because they're separated. All they want to do is see their baby and have that contact, but they can't stay in the nursery with the baby 24/7 because they need to sleep. So when they go back to the ward, or if they've already been discharged and they're at home, then you want to have some connection with your baby. And remembering too that we can always have our spiritual connection with them, like we've talked about so much, about communicating with your baby when they're in the womb, and you can keep that going while they're in the NICU, so that wherever you are, you can still be tuning into your baby and connecting with them on a soul level, so that you kind of have that connection always.
It's a sweet thing. You mentioned before about being up in old Papua New Guinea, and I'm sure, there's rituals up that neck of the woods with babies, but we have rituals here, in good old-fashioned Australia as well. How important is I don't know, traditions, rituals, that sort of thing when it comes to these things?
Well, very important. Depends what your cultural background is, and we have so many cultures here as well.
Great point.
And every culture has their own little rituals and things, which are very significant, and we need to actually also make sure we incorporate those when we're looking after babies.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, and if we look at the Indigenous Australians, they have very beautiful rituals and that they do, but that's where they find it hard when they have to be separated from their people and their country and come here. Like if they've got a preterm baby, then they're isolated from their community. They come into a big hospital here, which they're not used to, because when they're living on the land, you're not used to a multi-story building, let alone very sterile environment. And once the baby's in the nursery, there's all these sounds going off. It's totally foreign.
Of course it is. So, I remember, the famous movie, Crocodile Dundee. When they drop, when they old Paul Hogan, they drop in the middle of New York. He's never seen an escalator before, right? So I can just imagine if you're pulling someone out of, the outback, somewhere up north, where we used to sort of, level playing field and lots of red dust, and then you put them in this environment which is completely different. Yeah, wow.
So this is where a lot of the trauma, the PTSD, the grief all comes in too, because they've got really strong rituals too around the burning of the cord. Because they burn it to separate it, and then they also bury the placenta on country. They've got a lot of really beautiful, significant rituals, and if they are not able to do that, then they feel like then the baby will be sick.
Is that right? They think that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's a lot tied into the correct way to do things, and so if you're separated from the people and the land, then how can the baby return to the land?
Yeah, look, a lot of people feel very attached to the land. Whatever culture you come from. Let's face it, it doesn't really matter about the color of your skin if you feel an attachment to where you come from.
Exactly.
So
it's really important to incorporate care, for the baby and the family involved, to make sure that you're taking into account all the cultural issues as well.
Okay, from that point of view, you're probably going to need some support, right?
Yes,
something
absolutely.
in the community, cultural stuff.
Yeah.
What would you recommend in that world?
Well, there's always, the good thing about NICUs is they're very well resourced, and they've got connections with big networks of all the different people that might be suitable for you to connect with. So, for instance, if you've got twins, which are commonly born preterm, especially triplets or quads, any multiples, then there's always the multiple
Fighting
birth
for space.
association.
Here we go.
Exactly.
Multiple birth association.
There's a multiple birth association, and there's also, the preterm association. There's associations for everything, and the NICUs have contact with all of these different associations. So no matter what the condition of your baby or what the circumstances are, they can put you in touch with a support network that you can tap into, so you can connect with other like-minded parents that have done the journey as well, and that can help guide you and support you. Or you might be doing the journey together, but it's nice to have moral support with someone that's in the same boat.
If you can identify with them, that makes a big sense. You've had a shared experience. I mean, it's probably a good opportunity to reflect that way. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, and what sharing the experiences with others, is that going to sort of? Well, I'm sure it's going to make the whole journey a lot easier, right?
Yeah, totally, because that you're not in it alone.
Yeah.
There's other people that are been through the same thing or going through the same thing, and you can share stories about keep in touch with how your babies are doing, and they become really good friends. A lot of them are lifelong friends, because they've connected in the nursery, and their babies have known each other since they were in NICU together.
I've had this experience where I've actually been at weddings, right, and where the best man or the maid of honor or whatever, literally they said, we met in, this has happened, we met in the ICU. Or, right. Because their mums were pregnant together at the same point of time,
exactly.
or they were, exactly that. A couple, I always remember this particular couple who, how cool is this? They met in the ward, the NICU ward, as far as the husband and wife, and they eventually, families were friends all their lives, and they eventually got married, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But they had a strange bond, and not strange in a negative way by any stretch. They literally knew each other their entire lives, and but where I'm going on this is the fact that the two families shared so much, all these experiences, and therefore, first it was giving each other support and all of that, and then eventually became, barbecues, and then it became birthday parties and all of that. So
it comes back to what I was originally saying too about the soul's journey, and we never know what's unfolding for people. But knowing that everything is divinely guided or whatever, so it sets the blueprint, if you like, for life, because where you're meant to go and the people you're meant to meet and connect up with, and you form this very special bond with people that you've been through this together. And challenging situations always help you to grow and evolve as a human, and bring people closer or break them apart. So it depends on how we respond to different situations as to where we go in life.
Where we go. Look, I was going to ask you for some closing thoughts, but I'm telling you right now, they were pretty much closing thoughts, weren't they? Well, I don't know. To me, they were. No, honestly, I mean, to wrap it all in a bow, what are your thoughts there?
Well, more is about giving hope to people out there that might have been through the experience or going through it at the moment, or know someone that is. If you're a family member and you're not sure about how to support someone going through this, because it's very challenging and very full of grief and trauma and everything. Best thing to do is to be there, to listen to them, support them, bring them meals, help them out as much as you can, and just really love them up, because they need a lot of loving and nurturing. And if you are in this situation, reach out to other people that are also going through the journey. And
I know someone you could reach out to. Perhaps they might even have a website. Where can we reach you?
Well, if you'd like to talk about, debrief your experience or anything like that, then you can reach me through my website at soulbirth.com.au.
Easy as that.
Easy.
And look, honestly, you're an incredibly easy person to talk to, and your wealth of knowledge is just off the chart. So,
Thank you.
no, it's such an important thing to, as I say, in the time that we've been speaking, the amount that I've learned, that and I mean, I've had my babies, but look, the things I would have done differently, it's just, and I don't live in regret, but knowledge is power. So if you can sort of speak to someone who really understands it,
and we learn by doing it, don't we? Learn by our experiences, and you didn't know what you didn't know. Now you know.
And sometimes I wonder why I know, but there we are. Hey, thanks for being part of Soulbirth here
Thanks,
on Edge
everyone.
Radio Australia.